The Stanley Cup final is officially underway. Welcome to the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live. Katie Gauze joined by Michael Tracos and Avery Lewis McDougall at the arena in Edmonton. So we obviously know that this was a crazy game. And Avery, I want to let you kick it off because the Oilers with a 4-3 victory in game one to take a lead in this series, scoring with 31 seconds left in overtime. Leon Draisaitl is the hero. But talk to us a little bit about that moment, about what happened when that goal was scored and what the overall environment was like throughout this game one.
Like the old saying goes, Katie, when we forget about dry, bad things happen. Leon Draisaitl in overtime on the power play wins it, and if Rogers Place roof could have blown off, it would have. 18,000 fans went wild as Edmonton got that series win and game one win, and it felt like in that overtime, the second part of that overtime, Edmonton dominated. They're getting their chances on Sergei Bobrovsky. It felt like they're gonna break through him eventually. We saw chances from Draisaitl, Kasperi Kapanen. It felt like Edmonton was throwing everything at Florida, and they're gonna break eventually in this overtime session.
No question. And Michael, I mean, we've talked about this leading into the series, but the importance of scoring first against a Florida team, which Edmonton did do. But then Florida very quickly kind of regaining control, taking their own lead. So you've got to give some credit to the Oilers in the way that despite scoring first, they did fall behind, but they battled back throughout this game and ultimately are able to come away with a victory.
Yeah, you got to give all the credit to Connor McDavid. And, the stars showed up tonight for Edmonton, and that's got to make Oiler fans really happy because, let's face it, if the Oilers are going to win this series, it's not going to be because of Kasperi Kapanen or guys on the fourth line. It's going to be because of Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid type things. And, he sets up Matthias Ekholm for the tying goal and then sets up Draisaitl not once but twice, I believe, tonight. So, set him up on the overtime goal at least. Just a big game by McDavid, huge game by Leon Draisaitl, and this is what Edmonton needed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of hype leading into the series in terms of what we could expect, and I mean, there were certainly periods of time throughout this game where really teams were kind of just trading back and forth. There was, some lulls, so to speak, where maybe this is just the throes of the first game of a series. Teams are sort of feeling each other out, right? Because there's obviously a lot of familiarity between these two. But Michael, what did you kind of notice in terms of sort of the overall atmosphere of the game, in terms of the chances, in terms of what we maybe saw glimpses of that we can expect throughout the series? Was there anything that surprised you from game one?
What surprised me were the penalties, Katie. And, Avery, I'd love to get your opinion on the goalie interference call that wasn't a call. And, that really it really could have changed things, especially for the Florida Panthers, because they not only get the goal, but, because the challenge was unsuccessful, Florida goes on the power play and then they're up 2-1. And it felt like that was going to be the overarching theme of the game, was the referees were just calling so many penalties in the first period. Thankfully, they put the whistles away in the second and we actually got back to hockey. But just from what I noticed from Edmonton and Florida, like Edmonton's speed was on full display. And whether it was McDavid, whether it was Kapanen, it seemed like they had a plan to really try to rush, go up the ice a lot and just really kind of control the pace. And, it's something to be watching for as we go into the series here.
Yeah, Avery, you were there obviously firsthand.
Yeah, totally.
What was the environment like with that goalie interference challenge?
It was a fan, you could feel the fans saying that was a bad call. And to me, honestly, that could have gone either way. That could have gone in favor of the Oilers or Florida. But what I was more surprised about was before that, we saw Jake Wallman had his stick held, and that wasn't called. To me, I thought that was more egregious than a goal interference, because that was, to me, very blatant. Wallman's stick was held, no call on that. So I get the interference call not going Edmonton's way, but the Wallman one being missed, to me, shocked me greatly.
And I mean, and Avery, when you think about just kind of the atmosphere of this arena, with all of the history between these two teams, and we've talked a lot about all the things that the Edmonton team learned from last year that they're obviously thinking about now, front of mind, to take a lead in this series. What does that kind of mean to this group? How does that sort of set the tone for maybe doing things differently this time around? It's just one game, but certainly this is a big moment for them.
For the Oilers, the big thing is to try and put those seeds of doubt into Florida's mind, and we saw all game long the physicality. We saw no matter who it was in an orange and blue jersey, they were throwing hits. They're making sure that anybody in a white jersey was being hit, and I think the big thing is that playing a heavy game against Florida, beating them out of their own game, is going to be paramount going into game 2, I do believe, Katie.
Absolutely. Michael, we talked about this on the show when we had Bruce Boudreau on there, but the importance of, Edmonton getting maybe a little bit of confidence. Obviously, what happened with them in last year's playoffs and their final was not something that they want to repeat. So again, one game, but this is such an important, start, I think, for them in order to, just get off on the right foot, I guess, so to speak, in a Stanley Cup final.
No, 100%. Like Edmonton is the home team, and Avery. It seemed like right from the anthem, the roof was gonna just come off of Rogers' place there. So, the crowd came out tonight, and the Oilers rewarded them with a win. That they needed this. We talked about it. Last year they looked a little shell shocked in the first 3 games. To go down 0-3 against the Panthers, that's not a recipe for success. Somehow they forced a game 7, but I think that was a lesson learned. So going into the series, they score first. They kept having an answer to Florida's. Whenever Florida scored, it seemed like Edmonton was right there back again, and it felt like Edmonton was going to get that tying goal. So again, this is a different Oilers team. I think they're even faster than last year. As much as they lost some pieces, this is still a heavy team. Like, I don't know what I was expecting out of Evander Kane, but with Zach Hyman out, a healthy Kane is so important. And you saw that hit he laid out on Aaron Ekblad in the first period, really kind of setting the tone. And I'm looking at the score sheet here: 51 hits for Edmonton, 51 hits for Florida. So, Florida likes to push teams around. They've been doing that throughout the whole playoffs. I don't think they're going to be able to do that throughout this 7-game series against Edmonton.
No, not at all. You're seeing a total team buy-in from Edmonton. You mentioned Michael Evander Kane. He's someone, and we saw him against the biggest Golden Knights, being a pest around Aiden Hill, frustrating Golden Knights by being the guy who gets to the front of the net, harassing a goaltender. And he's doing it again, in which he's laying the body. He's finding ways to get shots on net. When Evander Kane is active, he's a very solid forward on this team's top 9 unit.
Yeah, and I'm loving this.
Huge difference from a year ago where he was hurt. Like, he was just such a non-factor in last year's final. This year, they're going to lean on him so much more. Really can be an X factor for Edmonton.
I'm liking this stat I'm seeing online too, that the Oilers are having a lead in the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1990. It's kind of crazy when you start putting things into that kind of perspective, right? But that's just a testament to truly how important a moment like this is. And again, we've seen this throughout the course of any playoff series. Obviously, games go all the way to 7 for a reason, but to be able to take a lead in the series, to be able to establish winning at home is so important for this group, especially when you had the crowd behind you. They've been waiting for this moment. It was certainly very important. I want to talk a little bit then on the Florida side of things. Because again, this wasn't necessarily a game where I think you'd say that Florida did anything poorly either, but was there anything that you noticed about this Panthers group? Maybe if we want to shift gears, focus a little bit on what they were doing. Avery, what did you notice about Florida? Was there anything that was unexpected for you? Was this pretty much the brand of hockey we expected to get from them? Was this an even game? And I mean, it's just overtime and anyone wins at that point?
Exactly. No, this was a very even game. I wasn't shocked at all. But again, you saw guys like Aaron Ekblad playing well. You saw Sam Bennett getting behind Edmonton's defense. You saw Brad Marchand being that pest and being effective offensively. So we knew what the Panthers were going to bring to this series, and I wasn't surprised one bit at all with what they brought tonight.
Yeah, Sam Bennett was just a force, and if this is any indication, like, he's not cooling down. Like, he's right up there, I'd say. if Florida wins, he's got to be the Conn Smythe winner, because what does he get? His 11th and his 12th goal tonight, and he's involved in that goal by was it? Oh, I guess it did go to. I thought it was Verhee's goal. I guess they gave it to Bennett, so that was the 11th goal. But he was a force all night, and he's been like that all playoffs. So, I kept seeing on Twitter, like, okay, he's now up to $10 million in his next contract. Okay, now it's 11. All right, whatever, it's 12. And, Marner wants 14. Okay, well, Bennett's going to get 15. So it started kind of feeling that way, because regardless of what he did in the regular season, this guy has just been a force in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the brand of hockey that he plays is just becoming more and more apparent how important it is. I'm watching with my fiance, and the first thing he says is, wow, this is exactly what Toronto needs, when he's asking, like, is Bennett a UFA? Where's he going? I said, well, maybe Florida, maybe Toronto. He's like, oh my gosh, like, this is exactly what the Leafs need. But again, I mean, that's a testament to who Florida is, right? They take players who can come from anywhere, and they've kind of turned them into these monsters. But this is something that Bennett was kind of advertised as, even coming in from Calgary. Not that he had the amount of experience that he's obviously at this point now, but he is a guy that plays playoff hockey. He plays with an edge. But it feels like Edmonton has done a good job of matching that, because again, Florida is a team that likes to play that brand of hockey where they are going to try to push you around. Avery, are you a little surprised at the way that Edmonton has been able to sort of manage that without playing too much into Florida's hand, but still holding their own?
I'm not. This is a mature team that we talked about earlier, has learned from their mistakes from last year. And even going back to media day, you talk to guys like Connor McDavid, Evander Kane, Leon Draisaitl, and mentioned how learning about their mistakes, not being overwhelmed by the Cup final platform. And you're seeing that you saw it applied tonight. It was a team that was able to play on the edge, but not go over the edge. It's a team that isn't shell-shocked by being in the Cup final this time around.
Here we got the comment. The Panthers lost by 1 goal in OT with that loud crowd against them. Definitely don't count them out. And that is another important factor too, because Florida has been a monster on the road these playoffs, right? So that's another reason why this win for Edmonton to start things off is huge. But I think it's safe to say that we can expect a pretty big response from Florida, considering the fact that this game really did feel like it had swings and could have ended either way. I want to touch on one other area that, again, has been a focus throughout, I think, mainly Edmonton's playoff run, and that's goaltending, right? Because, again, this is something that since that LA series, Stuart Skinner, give him so much credit, has rebounded. Tonight, him and Bobrovsky really went toe-to-toe and were very equally matched. Would you not say, Michael?
Yeah, Bobrovsky actually faced more shots. I'm seeing here 46 shots to 32. So, it was a busier night for Bobrovsky. I thought that, one of the goals, I'm trying to think which goal it was. It might have been the maybe the Arvidsson goal. I didn't like a whole lot. We're going to see probably a better version of Bobrovsky as the series goes on. I can't imagine Florida trying to win a series against Edmonton, allowing 4 goals a game. That's just not what Bobrovsky is being paid to do. So it'll be interesting. We know Stuart Skinner, he's up, he's down. I thought he was pretty good tonight. I don't blame him really for any of the goals. Mm-hmm. That being said, I don't think we're going to probably see a goaltending matchup. There's just way too much offense. But, whatever goalie holds the other team to 3 goals is probably in a good position to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, again, this is maybe an uncharacteristic game from Florida in the sense that they did allow more shots than they're probably used to. I think that maybe that is, I would assume, truthfully, it is more a fact towards Edmonton with their ability to generate offense, maybe something Florida hasn't quite been tested with as much up until this point. But Avery, did you notice anything that, maybe was forcing the Panthers to allow more shots, forcing them out of their comfort zone? Is this just a product of Edmonton's style?
I think Edmonton's style is one that is finding ways to adapt and make Florida have to find new other ways to score. Because one thing I'm seeing with Edmonton's style is that they're collapsing to the front of the net quite a bit, and they're not allowing a lot of great chances to come towards Stuart Skinner. That's been the big thing for a long time, is that they're not letting a ton of high dangerous chances come towards Stuart Skinner. And if they do get on Skinner, Stuart has been big in not allowing too many massive rebounds, which has been a big adjustment for his play since he returned to lineup after during the Vegas series.
One thing that kind of stood out, and Avery, I don't know if you saw this as well, but Florida, they do pressure the D better than any team in the league, and that's sort of their MO.
Yes.
Is they just full court press teams. I didn't see Edmonton really struggle with that. Like, I don't know if it's obviously they're game planning for it, but they move that puck out of their zone really quickly. They started the rush real easily. Obviously it helps when you've got McDavid and Draisaitl taking these passes, but is that something that maybe Florida is going to have to really watch out for in terms of maybe not pressing so much because of that counterattack?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you see the ability of guys like Jake Wallman and John Klinberg stepping up, and then also too Evan Bouchard, someone who we know is a great offensive D-man, stepping up defensively as well too, Florida is going to have to adjust and think about what can we do to break this, to get past this, because right now Edmonton has 6 D-men who are absolutely locked in, and they're game changers right now for this series, because if Florida can't handle Edmonton's D, this series might go shorter than some people might think. I mean, I call this series a 6-game series, but if Florida has trouble again with Edmonton's defensive core, they might be in some trouble again coming into game 2.
Yeah. I saw somewhere on Twitter it was saying that Waldman's ice time was being cut, or either that or they were just double shifting Ekholm as the game was going on. And why wouldn't you? The guy had a monster game, and I guess he's pretty well rested, I guess, these playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Mattias Ekholm, he's someone who, since he coming to Edmonton, he's been definitively one of their best D-men, one of the best shutdown D-men in the league, showing it again. And you're right, Michael, the rest has done him well. And if you have Mattias Ekholm, he would have played in game 1 against LA. He's that kind of guy who didn't want to sit at all, but the rest has done him well. And he's going to be a major factor, I do think, come game 2.
Yeah, 25 minutes and 19 seconds. Only Evan Bouchard had more minutes as a defenseman for Edmonton. So, yeah right into the fire for the big Swede.
Well, he's more rested than everybody else in some regards. So I guess they're just going to capitalize on him every chance they get. I like this comment here. Does this Panthers game smell a little bit like their start to round 2, which, as we remember, was versus Toronto, where they lost 5-4? Are there any similarities that are sticking out to you, Michael?
The only thing I'd say is it was Bobrovsky not looking like Bobrovsky. I don't think that's the case tonight. I don't think
agree.
you really blame him as much as you would against those first 2 games against Toronto. It seemed like, he hadn't woken up yet. This was a different scenario. Honestly, Edmonton could have scored. Avery, I don't know what you thought, but McDavid had so many chances. He set up so many players. This could have easily have been, one of those games where Edmonton just rolls, to a 7 or 8 goals, and ends up taking it like a 7-3 game. How did you feel about like Edmonton's offense? And do you think that's going to be something where forget about who's in net? Edmonton's just going to score.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when all 4 lines are rolling like that, and you're right, Michael, we saw McDavid hit the post, hit the crossbar. This could have easily been, you're right, this could have been a 6-3, 7-3 game. This could have been a blowout. The amount of chances that they are getting where the shots are going just wide or hitting a block or just hitting a pad. Edmonton was rolling offensively. And if Florida can't find a way to slow down the rushes from McDavid, Draisaitl, and then Edmonton's depth, game 2 might not be a close game.
Yeah. And Avery, you're there in person, right? So you get to see this team, you get to cover this series. So is there anything that was being said leading up to this that's worth noting, from either side or from Edmonton in particular, any kind of commentary that the players were saying, a mindset that was being, kind of echoed leading into this, anything that you picked up from being around the rink?
I think the biggest thing was you talk to any one of these guys, be it from McDavid to Draisaitl to a Stuart Skinner to a Connor Brown, whoever it is, the big motto in this room is finishing the job. That's been the big thing they've been saying, even going back to training camp, finishing the job, because this team knows if they scored 2 more goals, they would have been a Cup champion right now. So it's been all about finishing the job, and even going back to say like the Four Nations face-off when Canada won that. Looking at Conn McDavid when he won the Four Nations face-off, like he didn't want to be on that trophy very much because he knew the trophy that he wanted is big and silver and weighs 35 pounds, not a 4-foot gold one. So the mentality of this team the entire year has been finish the job and be stoked about it, not get shaken up by anybody. So, and after seeing game one, I see the mentality is truly in this room, no matter what player it is you talk to.
Yeah, win one for Zach Hyman too, right, Avery? Like, we saw him, or you guys got to see him today in Edmonton. He's got the cast on. He was talking about how emotional he was when the players all reached out to him. The fact that he's not going to be able to be part of the team, but I imagine he's still a very much big part of that team in that dressing room. Do you think that's going to help? Just having that kind of, I don't want to say leadership, but Zach's a popular guy, obviously, in that room. The players think the world of him. Just having him there and knowing what he's kind of put on the line for this team. Do you think that can be kind of that emotional thing where, they try to win it for him?
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, Zach is definitely part of the rallying cry, and being around Zach Hyman, like he is absolutely everybody in that locker room thinks Zach is the greatest guy in the world. The training staff loves him. The coaches love him. Even the media, like dealing with Zach every day as a media like Zach is one of the more kind guys to talk to, remembers your name, great answers. So he's someone who, no matter who it is in that room, they want to win one for him. And you're right, Zach was there, talked today. Zach's in the press box. Zach's hanging around the locker room. He's going to travel to Florida for games 3 and game 4. He'll be around this team as much as possible, even though he cannot play. This team, no matter who it is, wants to win this cup for him and get him a ring.
Yeah, it's awesome too. I mean, again, these guys, they battle all season long, and certainly to lose a guy like that who is an integral part of the team, an integral part of the offense, just a voice in that room that's going to be so important. It's nice to see that he'll continue to be a part of that. I like this comment here. It says, Panthers were jet lagged. They had been in the arena since 9 a.m. And I think we do forget that this series, other than pretty much Vancouver, is one of the hardest travel series in terms of going from Florida to Edmonton. I don't know how much that plays a factor. Again, we see these guys, they have the schedules pretty worked out. But Avery,
they also have direct flights, unlike the
exactly.
They are on much better flights than the rest of us would be.
They're chartering. Okay, they got their private flights.
Yeah,
they'll be fine, Katie. We'll have to shed a tear for them.
No, I know. I mean, they've got that Capitol Grill waiting for them on the plane. Got that catering going in and out. It's good, but I mean, again, this is just a little bit more of a bear in terms of the travel expectation for everyone.
Yeah, and the one thing I guess is the crowd, and I haven't seen. I obviously Edmonton's crowd has been there all playoffs, but rank this, Avery, like first round, second round, conference final, and then what you saw tonight. Was this noticeably louder than what we saw against the Stars or the Golden Knights or the Kings?
1,000% agree. Like, yeah, you're right. It was loud against the Kings and against Dallas, but it felt when it came to sound, it was getting past 100 dBs during pregame skate or during warm-ups. Like it was, and fans were, I'm dead serious, 100 dBs during the pregame skate. Like it was, and fans were, and the thing is too, like in other rounds, you would see fans walking around, fans aren't fully in. No, fans were in their seats ready way before the opening face-off, way before either anthem was sung. They were there trying to make it hostile for the Panthers during warm-ups. That's another level of dedication from this fan base who wants to see a championship.
Yeah, I saw our colleague Ryan Kennedy. He had his earplugs at his desk, so he was fully ready.
Wearing them.
Yeah, he was wearing them. He's an old-time drummer from hardcore band, so his hearing's probably shot from those days. So I don't blame him.
I was gonna say, does he hear much at this point? I mean, he's probably just getting the ambiance of it.
Well, he always pretends he doesn't hear us, Katie. So I don't know if that's just our arguments or what.
Yeah, maybe we just aren't making good points and he's got selective hearing for a different reason. A reminder that the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live is presented by Sticks.com. Don't break the bank on sticks when you can get a pro-level composite stick without the pro-level price tag at Sticks.com. That is Stix.com. Make sure you go check it out. We've got another good comment here. Will Draisaitl win the Conn Smythe and the Hart? Obviously, the Hart Trophy remains to be seen. He certainly is going to be one of the key pieces that if Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup, you would think he's going to have a big role in that. So the Conn Smythe, very possible. What do you think, Avery?
It would be hard pressed if Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup. It would be hard pressed for me to not say he's going to win both. He's been that dynamic game changer this postseason and all season long. And some people might argue that Connor McDavid had a bit of a down year, but Leon Draisaitl was taking that slack of McDavid having a quote unquote down year and taking that to be the true second option, sometimes number one option offensively for the Oilers. So yeah, if Edmonton wins the Cup, I'd be hard-pressed to not say that Conn Smythe and Hart goes to Leon Draisaitl. Although my second choice, Edmonton still wins, I would say don't rule out a Conn Smythe for Evan Bouchard possibly as a dark horse.
I like it.
It's funny. Last year, I had to look it up, because I just forgot. But Connor McDavid won despite the fact that Edmonton lost, and it's one of those rare years. But
it's awful to go back out.
Yeah, honestly, I don't blame you for picking Draisaitl. I'll just say McDavid has got, I think, 26 points now. He's leading the playoffs in scoring. What he hasn't done is, actually score some goals. Remarkably, what does he have now? 5 goals only, or 5 or 6 goals in the playoffs. He's not for a lack of trying, but I like McDavid still for the Conn Smythe. If Florida wins, and I guess, it's too early to count them out, for sure I'm going Bennett.
Yeah, he has been just kind of a maniac out there. Certainly seems to be an important pick. We've got a comment. This is not the Miami Dolphins. Calm down. Panthers got this.
Well, that is the thing, though, because I think a lot of the people in the media, especially north of the border, we all want Edmonton to win because it's been since '93 since the Stanley Cup was brought back home to Canada, despite it always being in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But let's not count this Florida Panthers team out. As many have mentioned, they were down 0-2 to Toronto, and they made quick work of the Carolina Hurricanes as well as the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those games 5 and 7 against Toronto just shows how dangerous of a team they can be. So, Edmonton, the worst thing they could do is really kind of relax after this win. They really just kind of have to think of it as, all right, as good as we played tonight, we have to play even better in game 2 because Florida is going to come back. And really give them that. I've already made my picks. I'm picking Edmonton in 7, but it's going to be a hard 7. This isn't going to be one of those ones where, Edmonton just kind of cakewalks to like a 3-0 lead like Florida did last year. No, this is probably going to go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, and I think one of the themes from this entire playoff series is what has Florida not done very often? Lose back-to-back games. So this is something that has to be very front of mind. And, it's not a concern. It's just you have to have an awareness that this is a team that is so opportunistic, right? When we talked to Bruce the other day, Michael, he talked all about how, they're relentless and they attack. And tonight they didn't necessarily get as many opportunities with that, blood in the water effect where they score 1, they score 2, but we saw a little flash of that. I think that's another area where Stuart Skinner needs to get a lot of credit because those are key saves, even if he's not necessarily getting as much volume as Bobrovsky. Certain moments where, you just have to hold Florida off. They're going to have stretches where they just attack. If you can survive, kind of make it through that storm, that onslaught of offense, it's important. All right, well, let's wrap things up as we kind of look ahead to what game 2 has to offer. Avery, I'll start off with you. What's kind of an expectation in terms of what will be a key from Edmonton's side of things before we go to you, Michael, on what's going to be important for the Oilers? What do they need to focus on if they want to continue this hot streak and get a win in game number 2?
I think the big thing to focus on once again is getting shots and traffics on Sergei Bobrovsky early. They did it tonight in game 1. If you do it again in game 2, you should be in great shape.
I like it. All right, Michael. So then flip side, what are we expecting from the Panthers? What are going to be kind of the things that you expect to see them doing early in this next game, or what's kind of a key factor for them to even the series up?
Yeah, I don't think they have to do anything too crazy. I think they just
Yeah.
need a better performance from Bobrovsky. Like maybe,
Okay.
steal a game would be easy for the Florida Panthers to ask of him. But the other thing is, this is just, Florida Panthers are, we heard it from Paul Maurice last year. They're not playing this to try to win in 4 games. Like they're
Oh, yeah.
expecting a 7-game series, and they're putting their licks on Edmonton's forwards and their defense. And come game 6, come game 7, I think they're hoping that they wear down the likes of Draisaitl and McDavid and some of those Oiler defensemen to the point where, they are rushing things, and Florida can sort of, win by a battle of attrition.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we know about them is that, again, we even saw this on display tonight. They are not going to deviate from their game plan. They're not going to start doing anything crazy, anything different, because they are built to win a 7-game series. So losing one game, sure, not ideal. You're on the road, win game 2, and then you reset. And every night we see the same kind of product coming out from this Florida team. So that's something that'll certainly be interesting to see if they can pick it up. But Edmonton has proven to be one of the most interesting challenges for them so far. And I think it's setting things up to be a very interesting Stanley Cup final. Avery, Michael, thanks so much for being on here tonight as we broke down game number 1 of the Stanley Cup final. Edmonton with a 1-0 lead in the series as game number 2 is set to kick off on Friday at 8 p.m. We'll be back here with all of the post-game reactions and action on the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live. But that does it, Avery. We're sending you home. Hopefully your eardrums can recover in time for game number 2. It'll be just as loud and just as fun. Guys, thanks for joining me. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks for commenting. We will see you all very soon. Have a great night.